Hey, welcome back. In this lecture, we're concerned with performing a line trace, and we'll learn exactly what that means. We're going to use a line trace so that we can get a hit location when we fire the weapon. That way we can do things like spawn particles, deal damage once we have something that we can damage, and access information about hit events that get generated when we perform line traces. So let's talk about line traces. When you perform a line trace, in the space of a single frame, you're essentially drawing a line from one location to another. These locations are vectors. And what we do is we take a location that we designate as the line trace start location, and we take another location set to be the line trace end location. The line trace will draw an invisible line from the start to the end location. And if any objects exist between the start and end location that the line trace hits, then we generate a hit result. Now the hit result can give us some information. For example, say we hit a particular actor, the hit result will store the impact location, that exact spot where we hit that actor. The hit result contains lots of other information, including a reference to the actor that was hit. So we can use that when we want to deal damage. So our goal is to perform a line trace when we shoot the weapon, get the hit location, and spawn an impact particle system. We can use spawn emitter at location for this. So let's set this up. Now, Unreal Engine has various ways to perform traces. If we right-click, we can type line trace by channel and select line trace by channel. Now, when we say channels, we're talking about collision channels. And line traces can be assigned the visibility or camera channel. Now, each component on an actor is set to react to certain channels in various ways. For example, if we select our capsule component, here in the Details panel, we can scroll down to the Collision section. And here where we see Collision Presets, we can click the drop-down, and these are grayed out, but we see that we have some collision responses here. And this is showing us that our capsule component is set to react to the different channels in one of three ways: ignore, overlap, or block. The capsule component is set to ignore the visibility channel, which means if we performed a line trace and this capsule component was in between the start and end location, we would not get a hit result. The capsule would have to be set to block the visibility channel for that to work. So when performing line traces, it's important to understand that all components are set to react to the different channels in various ways. Now let's go into our level here and click on some mesh that exists, such as this corner. Now with this corner selected, I can right-click on this mesh in the World Outliner and browse to the asset and open it up in the Static Mesh Editor. And I can scroll down to the Collision section. Now if I expand the drop-down for Collision Presets, I see that it's set to block all channels, and that includes visibility. So a line trace would hit this mesh. Now the collision enabled setting also matters here. We see that it's set to query and physics. Query is for overlap events, physics is for the physics simulation, and also hit events, like those generated with line traces. So query and physics is needed for something to interact with a line trace. Now back in FPS Character, we see line trace by channel takes a start and an end location. I'm going to hook this up after we play the fire montage so we can do this line trace when we shoot the weapon. Now our line trace needs a start and an end location. And if we want to hit something that we're looking at, then we should trace from the center of our screen outward. Now we can get the center of our screen from the Player Camera Manager. That's a class that already exists, and we can get to it with Get Player Camera Manager. Now from Player Camera Manager, we can drag out and type Get Actor Location. And we can also drag out and type Get Actor Forward Vector. So we have a location for our Player Camera Manager, and we have the forward direction out from our screen. Now the location we can just use as the start location for our line trace. And for the end location, we want to take our start location and add this forward vector to it. When you add one vector to another, we get a new vector, starting at the first one and ending at the second one. So we're going to take our get actor location, type a plus, and get an add node. And we want to add this forward vector, but we want this forward vector scaled by some amount. That way our line trace will reach out further than just 1 unit, which is what the forward vector magnitude is. So if we drag off of the get actor forward vector and type multiply, we see that we can multiply this vector by another vector. Now, if we want to scale this vector by an amount, we can just multiply its x, y, and z all by the same value. I'd like to trace out by 5,000 units, so I'm going to put a 5,000 for x, y, and z. And I can hook this up to the add node. So we're scaling the forward vector by 5,000 and adding that to our player camera manager location, and we can hook this into the end location. Now notice the line trace by channel node has a draw debug type, and it's set to none. But if we change this, we can see a debug line that represents our line trace. We can draw it for a single frame, we can draw it for a duration, or we can draw persistent lines, which stay there. Let's choose for duration and click this drop down where we see draw time, and it's set to 5 seconds. So that's fine. So let's compile and hit play. And now if I fire the weapon, I see that I have a line drawn from the camera location outward, and it shows me a point where we hit. That's that red square. So we have a line trace, and it's hitting the static meshes in the world. So we can use this to spawn impact particles at the impact point for this line trace. So how do we do that? Well, line trace by channel has an output called out hit, and this is a hit result. If we click and drag off and select break hit result, we can see all of the information stored in the hit result. And if we click the drop down, we see that there are quite a few variables here. The hit actor will actually give us a reference to the actor we hit. And the impact point is a vector representing the point in space that we hit. That is what we're interested in if we want to spawn some impact particles. Now we have some impact particles in our assets folder. If we go to characters, the one I'd like to use is here in the Bellica folder. If we go to effects, particles, Bellica, abilities, primary effects, here we see Bellica hit world. Now it's not necessary to dig into these folders. As we've seen before, we can just select this from a drop-down in spawn emitter at location. So your challenge is to spawn impact particles. We now have a hit result from our line trace. You're going to use break hit result
and use the impact point for the emitter location.
Use spawn emitter at location and select the particles that you'd like to spawn. Choose Bellica hit world if you like. Pause the video and give this a try. Okay, so back here in FPS character, I'm going to right-click and type spawn emitter and choose spawn emitter at location. Now I'm going to hook up this pin to the input, and for the location, I'm going to choose the impact point. For the rotation, it doesn't really matter what the rotation is for this particular particle system. Now I'm going to select the drop-down and choose P Bellica hit world. And now that I'm spawning impact particles, I really don't care about drawing a debug line, so I'm going to change the debug type to none, compile, and hit play. And now if I fire the weapon, I see that I have impact particles. Awesome. So in summary, we are now spawning impact particles, and it looks like we're shooting a bullet and hitting something in the world. And we now have a hit result, which we've seen contains the actor that we hit, so we can use that later to apply damage. Great job. I'll see you soon.